Hi, this is Denise Matthew, and welcome to another part of HT 101, How to Read Your Human Design Chart. I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to slow down the speed of my voice, it's an easy thing to do. Just do it on the playback speed as I'm showing here, and it will be an experience tailor-made for you. So the first center we're going to talk about is the head center. This is also called a pressure center. When we talk about pressure centers, there are actually two of them. One is the head center and one is the root. We'll talk about the root a little bit later, but for now, we'll talk about the head center. The head center is always inspired when it's open. When you're in the aura or when you're close to the frequency of somebody with a defined head center, then the defined head center, somebody with a defined head center is always giving their frequency. They're always transmitting their inspirations. And because of this, somebody with an open head center, if you're in an area where there's a lot of people with defined head centers or a lot of energy, thought of inspiration around, then you're going to be inspired a lot. So what it means is that a lot of times you'll feel like the pressure to think things, pressure to get some ideas, get some answers, pressure to figure things out, and a pressure to check things out. So you could be out shopping, come home. When you get home, you realize, oh my goodness, I want to look on the internet for this particular thing that just kind of came into my head. And you're looking on the internet and you're checking it out. And all of a sudden you just kind of, the energy kind of dissipates and you go, why am I even looking at this? Why am I wasting my time on this? So that's the energy of a pressure center that got flipped on, and we didn't know that we were actually being flipped on. But when we realize that we're always going to be inspired by anybody who's transmitting, and the inspirations that are important to us will continue to come to us. And so it's all about sifting through what is mine and what isn't mine. And when we can do that, then we can figure out what needs to be thought about, what inspiration do I need to work with, and what inspiration should I just let go because it was something that just is not something that really matters to me. Because we all have our things that matter to us and the things that don't matter to us. And it's just this whole idea of getting caught in this idea that you want to find something out, and in fact you go, like they say, down a rabbit hole, and there's nothing there that you've ever wanted anyway. So based on statistics, only 30% of the population have a defined head. So those are the people that have a more fixed way of being inspired because it is something that they're transmitting. And what they're transmitting is going to be related to the gates or the channels that are defined. And the one thing about somebody who has a defined head, they're always going to have a defined ajna too, because it's impossible to not have the two together. So automatically somebody with a defined head is going to have more fixed inspirations, and they're also going to have more fixed beliefs. So we also look at the whole concept that if we have a center that's defined, that there's always going to be that constant energy to have these inspirations. So they're always inspiring everyone around them. And the biggest key with this is no matter how much energy that you're using, it will never get depleted when you have a defined head, because it's just a constant supply of this inspiration. So that's why 70% of the population who have an open head can get all their inspiration from somebody with a defined head. And we also have to remember that this transmission of energy or frequency or whatever you want to call it isn't something that is in any way conscious. So anybody who has a defined head, they're not consciously thinking, okay, I'm going to go and inspire people. This is something that's purely energetic, and it's not something that they can shut off and turn on at their leisure. So that's just part of what it is. We already talked about what it means to have an undefined head center, and basically it's all about taking these inspirations in from somebody who's defined and making it bigger. So there's this pressure to figure things out, to make sense of things, to act on inspirations that come into your being. So it's always this concept of being inspired all the time until you sort of catch hold of yourself and go, okay, what is mine? What questions do I need to explore? And is this something that I need to get into in my life? And if it's not, just let it go and move on. So that's the way that these energies work in the head center. The defined is inspiring, and the open head center is being inspired. And there are only 3 gates in the head center. the gate 64, and this is also the pressure to make sense of things or to figure things out. The gate 61 is the pressure to know, and the gate 63 is the pressure to understand. And one thing that we can talk about is if somebody has all of these gates defined, but they don't have a connection between the head and ajna, it can be a problem for, they sometimes call them the gates of madness, because if you can imagine, it's like there's no connection. You have all these thoughts, but you don't have any connection to get it into the ajna, to get it to the throat, because ultimately every bit of our energy, we're even, you know, our thoughts or anything, we're trying to get it to the throat so that we can sort of articulate what we're thinking, articulate what we're believing, you know, those kind of things. So ultimately, when we have all these gates and there's no outlet for them, then that's why they call it the gates of madness, or there can sometimes be some mental illness. But, you know, that's the theory, whether it's practice or not. Now, somebody who actually has all these gates defined without an outlet for them between the head and ajna, there's no connection, is Britney Spears. Between the head and ajna, there's no connection, is Britney Spears. Now, from the outside, you would look at 3 gates, 64, 61, and 63, and you would think, well, that's not a lot of energy. There's only 3 gates, because you have like the throat center, and there's so many gates, and the identity center, and there's so many gates. But if you can imagine that each one of these gates have a tremendous amount of power, and so maybe that is why they're called the gates of madness, because there is so much energy coming through them when they're defined. Again, this is going to be a fixed type of energy when they're defined, and more fluid when they're open. But when we talk about the gate 64, we're talking about huge ideas, big ideas. The gate 64 connects the gate 47, and then you have the whole channel of having these big ideas, and then you have this gate 47, which is all about mindset and saying, okay, you have these big ideas, what can we put together? It's like kind of like an aha moment that comes after you have this big download of information that you think you can do this big giant project, or this, you have this big revelation, and then the gate 47, it can connect and give you this big revelation of, wow, I mean, this can actually happen. They also say that gate 64 is a plug point to super consciousness. So when you have the gate 64 defined, it means that you can have a connection to otherworldly connections, and there could be some level of psychic connections as well. When you have the gate 64 defined, you could be a right brain dominant learner. And it is a sense of knowing as opposed to something that you can prove. So that's why it can be difficult to have this type of energy, because you can't prove that you know, but you just feel like you know something. In other words, you can get the answer to something, but not know the whole, how did you get the answer? Like when you're in school, a lot of times when you were learning arithmetic, you would learn arithmetic by showing your work to how you got the product. But when you have the gate 64, sometimes you just get the product, but you don't necessarily have the ability to show the work to get it there, because it just kind of drops into your mind. The gate 61 is all about knowing the unknowable, searching to find the answer to things that can't be answered. This year in 2020, the gate 61 is being transited by Pluto, and that's talking about this whole dissolving of this idea of trying to know the unknowable, or in other words, we're transforming that concept. And when we talk about the gates of the head, you know, again, I just talked about it, the mental health aspect. So are we transforming mental health in 2020 and how we see it going forward in the future? But the gate 61 is, if you can imagine, you just have like a flashlight and you're in a hugely dark field. Now the flashlight will only show you a little part of the field, and it's only going to show you the part of the field that you're moving in towards. So in other words, if you're walking forward, you'll see a little bit of the field or where you're at, and you'll know what's in that particular space. But then if you look around you, it will all be pitch black and you won't know. So you really want to know everything that's around you, but unfortunately, that's just not the way this energy works. What you'll get is little bits of things, little gems that you can string together, and then eventually you'll get a bigger picture of what exactly is going on. This is connected to the gate 24, so there can be a lot of this almost addiction, because a gate 24 can be some level of addiction, or returning to the scene of the crime. So returning to this idea of, I want to know the unknowable. There can be this ability with the gate 61 to have a deep connection with otherworldly things. Like most of these gates, there is some level of psychic intuition, and this intuition comes, and it can be almost like a mediumship you can have when you have this gate defined. As well as the 952, the gate 61 can have some connection to to ADHD, and because there's just this almost always trying to figure things out in your head that you completely get lost. Anybody who has a gate 61 can be an auditory learner. And especially when you have an open head, you can try and see every single angle to everything that you want to know. And it becomes almost like a repetition that goes over and over in your mind. So sometimes just unhooking from this energy, unhooking from this need to think will give you a little bit of a break, because it can be almost exhausting if it gets to be overwhelming for you. When you have the gate 63 defined, that's all the connection of the 63 4, and it is about this whole concept of one word, doubt. So when we talk about doubt, we have it connected to the gate 4, and the gate 4 is the answer. So it is a very logical kind of energy. And so you have the gate 63 doubting things and doubting the answer. There could be self-doubt even with this energy. The nice thing about the 63 is that you are going to be that voice of reason that says, okay, you want to make all this work, but how are we going to make this work? And could this be a problem? And I don't really see that it's going to work this way. So, prove it to me how it actually does work. It is very logical, as I said, and there is some level of suspicion, and there could be potential for people who have this energy defined. There could be potential for somebody to be interested in conspiracy theories. There could be a deep interest in things that you might feel like people are hiding information from you. So there could be that energy of trying to get to the bottom of things, like what's the actual truth, because you have it connected to the gate 4, which is all about the answer, searching for the answer, finding the answer. As well as I said, these are the gates of madness. They could be also the gates of dreaming. So you could have a lot of intuitive dreams that can actually tell you a lot about what's going on in your life or things that are going to happen. There could be some prophecy as well. So that's something that can happen. It doesn't happen to everybody, but there is potential for this as well. So if you have 3 gates, you'll say the gate 64 is how, the gate 61 is why, and the gate 63 is can you prove it? And that's all there is for the head center.